You're listening to DruidCast episode 204.
Gone, you wore the crown, and now we carry you home. Furrows ploughed in the waiting land, to the ground from my hand this day. Your seeds are sown, and the sun brings the song of your rebirth. Born of fire and water, air and earth, I will care for you through sun, rain and storm. And on the solstice day I will run with a wolf in the corn. Waxing here the turning wheel, green man of the fields of corn. You stand so high under the summer sun. The wind blows and the wolves begin to run, and so do I. And the sun brings the song of your rebirth. Born of fire and water, air and earth, I will care for you through sun, rain and storm. And on the solstice day I will run with a wolf in the corn. One more sheaf and the harvest home. Wolves fled, you stand alone. Now I cut you down. Ribbons red and a whispered prayer braided through your golden hair once more. You wear the crown, and the sun brings the song of your rebirth. Born of fire and water, air and earth, I will care for you through sun, rain and storm. And on the solstice day I will run with the wolf in the corn. Winter's gone, you wore the crown, and now we carry you home.
Hello my friends and welcome to DruidCast episode 204. I am your host Dave the Bard, and DruidCast is brought to you on or around the 20th of the month by the Order of Bards, Ovates and Druids. If you want to find out more about membership to the Order and our courses, you can do that at our website, which is at druidry.org. Opening the show, you heard Wolf in the Corn from my new album Raise the Flag of Green, a song celebrating the summer solstice. Now, at this time here in the south of England, John Barleycorn is standing tall and green in the fields, and when the wind blows through his hair, it creates waves across the field, and these were once known as the Wolf in the Corn. I love that story. So, blessed solstice, my friends. The longest day has finally arrived here in the Northern Hemisphere, and a blessed winter solstice to all of you listeners in the Southern Hemisphere. This month's Talkie Bit is actually 3 Talkie Bits. At the beginning of June, the Order held its annual summer gathering, the first in its new home of the Strode Theatre in Street near Glastonbury, and it was celebrating the 60th anniversary of the founding of the Order. And as part of that day, there were 3 presentations about the Order, past, present and future. One from the current chosen chief, Irma Burke, then Professor Ronald Hutton, and the last being past chosen chief, Philip Cargom. The presentations were recorded, so I'm delighted to be able to play them here and share some of the magic of that weekend. Now, there was quite a lot of reverb in the theatre, and I've done my best to clean up the recordings using my audio tech tools, so I hope that won't distract you too much. There's still a bit left. So here are the 3 morning presentations from this year's 60th anniversary OBOD Summer Gathering.
So we celebrating our 60th. I remember 10 years ago when we were at 50th with some wonderful talks. Ronald gave as he always does, and we're in for a treat after mine, by the way, so you just bear with me first. His understanding of the Order, and Philip and Kathleen Matthews. And I'm not going to give you a history of the Order. I leave that to the historians and people who know better than me. But I'm just going to share with you some of my observations since I joined. I joined in 2003. And we have a phrase in Irish, it's an pain thorsham fears to sail no agro. And it's universal. The only real constant in life is change. And I was chatting to Dave earlier this morning, when OBOD started with, there was an ad in a magazine and you sent off and you got your course. And then it developed. NOBOD, the network of OBOD, was set up by Kathleen Harrington and Arthur Scarborough in the US. That was the only way that OBODies could contact each other. That was an email list. And then how, with technological developments, how we began to communicate. I don't know when the website was set up, but just when I joined, I was kind of surprised, maybe a little bit put out, to discover that people like Druids went online and they had message boards, and there was a thing called the Druids Head Pub. And that was the name given to the message board, and I thought, that's wrong, that Druids don't do this, and I'm not really a social media person. Anyway, that was really, really heavily contributed to, and I know the pub was closed at one point, and then it was reopened, and then it changed and morphed into the message board that has been maintained by Kathleen and Scarborough until recently, when unfortunately the message board was hacked into. Anyway, so when I started OBOD, this is what I got in the post. Does anyone remember these? Yeah. And I loved, and I've heard so many people say this, the excitement of getting the brown envelope every month, wondering what I was going to take out. That is something precious that can never be repeated through digital technology. Anyway, does anyone remember those? Yeah. So those who went audio could get one of these. And then they became obsolete. And look what came. And it was interesting, when CDs were developed in the real world or the outside world, they replaced vinyl because they were going to be perfect recordings, no scratching, and that they were indestructible. And of course we found out that that was not the case. And guess what? Vinyls has come back. It's just interesting how things change. And in 2019, an OBOD member asked me when we would go digital, because CDs were no longer useful. And that computers no longer came with a CD drive. And I love CDs, sorry, I still have them. And so if I'm at a concert, I will buy the CD, because I still enjoy it. I got an external hard drive for my computer. You can get those, by the way. Anyway, so I did say at this point we were developing the online course. Of course, that was launched in 2022. And that is how so many people access their courses now. And in 2020, with the pandemic, it brought many changes for the order. And one important one for me was the online installation ceremony in 2020. That, thanks to Dave, I think he's still trying to recover from it. Stephanie, Philip, myself, Susie McNail, and Adam, Philip and Stephanie's son-in-law, recording, sending things back and forth, trying to match them up because we're all in isolation. And to create an absolutely amazing ceremony as I sat in my sitting room, feeling and being aware as Philip handed the mantle over to me. And I was in tears, I was surrounded, I had my family with me and some friends. And I was blown away by how, at the possibility that this had, a pre-recorded ceremony could have such magic. And of course, we work as Druids on the inner plane, on the astral. It shouldn't have been a surprise, but it certainly was. But a very, very profound experience for me. And as Druids, of course, we navigate the boundary between this world and the other world. 1 foot in and 1 foot on the other one. So, since then, we've developed our community through the magic of online ritual, through our Zoom meetups. We have a climate listening circle, we have the mental health group, we have Death Cafe. And what I find fascinating is that as our membership grows, and it has grown, that our sense of community has become closer, tighter. Particularly for those who are living not in these islands, that we have created a wonderful online, a felt close-knit community through our online technology. That is an absolute miracle in my mind. And now we have the hearth. And thanks to a wonderful team of incredibly dedicated, enthusiastic people, they have worked so hard. So many of you might have experienced some frustrations, either not getting your invitation or something not working, but they have been working night and day to make this. And Lisa, who designed the hearth, how it looks, she shared an interesting fact the other day, that we now have just over 17,000 members on the hearth, which is equivalent to the capacity of the Coca-Cola arena in Dubai. These kind of facts are very, very important. So, the harp is a wonderful innovation, and it's that beautiful, intimate, private space for our members. It's free from trolls. So, advertising, data mining, and it'll make the need for official Facebook groups, OBOD groups, to make them redundant. I'm now going to tell you a story. Sorry, I'm standing on my toes trying to reach it. Can you hear me now if I'm standing flat? Okay. So, I was a Chatnansher in here. Fado, a long time ago. Vi buchel og darba anam kien. Agus ag tastel, harna tira ag lurg agna. Agus green baba. Long time ago in Ireland, there was a young boy called Cian who travelled throughout Ireland in search of wisdom. and the meaning of life. Can you all hear me? Yes. Now, this is a universal story. It's as old as Solomon itself, but this is my Irish version, okay? So Cian's travels took him to a small little village in Lower on Firthic in the middle of the bog, where he met an old man, and he said to the old man, "Where can I find food and lodgings for the night?" And the old man welcomed him, and he said, "We're a small village, and it's not often that we have visitors. But if you go up to Aoife, she's a very kind woman who lives up at the end of the village in her Chachmore, in her big house. She will offer you food and lodgings for the night." So Cian thanked the old man, and he headed up to the Chachmore, knocked on the door. Agus fuair sé fáilte móra Aoife, a bhí in a ban cinálta. He got a great welcome from this woman, so kind and caring she was. Agus fuair sé nua gach bí is seangachtaí, the rare nósanna na flachúlachta ag an áil sin. He received the freshest of food and the oldest of drink, in keeping with the ways of hospitality in those times. And Dairi Lo Gahanwale Kayla got on very, very well. And then the time came when Cian had to say goodbye. And he was quite sad saying goodbye to this beautiful, kind woman. And he said, "Is Iantoch an bhanhu? Ta chudini ta agatsa. Tiltu gomagas. You are an amazing, wonderful woman, and you deserve everything you have. Ach mar fragra, darish an bhan fasa an nasho. Quivenet sho, a waki. Nil tilla, don fe, not throw." To this, the wise Aoife replied, "Don't be deceived, young man. Nil tilla don fe, not throw." In other words, there is no flood that doesn't recede. This too shall pass. Cian was rather perplexed at the meaning of this, but he said goodbye and continued on his travels. And years passed, and Cian, now a young man, still in search of wisdom across the world, found himself back at the same village in Lower and Firthic in the middle of the bog. And he set out to find Aoife, but he couldn't find her house anywhere. And he met a young man on the road, and he said, "I'm looking for Aoife, but I can't find her house." Aoife now lives in the house of the Taoiseach, the chief. She's now working for him, and he gave him directions. So Cian thanked the young man, headed off towards the Taoiseach's house, and he knocked on the door. And to his horror, Aoife answered the door, but this time she was dressed in rags. And she welcomed him in, just like she did those years before, and she explained to him that a flash flood had washed away her big house, leaving her homeless overnight, and that she now worked for the Taoiseach as a servant. And despite her changed circumstances, Aoife never lost that kindness, that hospitality, that wisdom, that sense of wonder about the world. And she provided Cian with the same food, shelter, and wisdom and companionship that she had given him all those years before, while he helped her with her chores around the house. And then when it was time for Cian to say goodbye, he was so saddened again, saddened by Aoife's plight. And he cried, "Ní sé seo ceart. Is tú an ban is kinolta sa down. This is so unfair. You are the kindest woman in the world." And Aoife embraced Cian and said in her wise way, "Chudníar seo, ní tilla, dá féad nach drón. This too shall pass." And Cian still didn't understand the meaning behind these words, but he continued on his travels. And once again, many, many years passed, and Cian, seasoned by his experiences from his travels, was now a rich and wise man, but he had never forgotten the kindness he had been shown in his youth. And he decided once more to visit Aoife. And he got a gold ring made with rubies as a gift for her. But when he reached the village, he discovered that Aoife sadly had passed away. And he found her grave, and on the headstone, what was engraved on it? "Nil tilla dá féad nach drón. This too shall pass." But heartbroken that he hadn't come sooner to see her, he promised himself that every year he would come back to visit Aoife's grave and pay his respects to her. And that he did. Year after year after year, Cian would return to that little village in the middle of the bog and visit Aoife's grave. Until one year, he arrived and there was no grave. Another flash flood had washed away the grave. And he was devastated, and he looked up to the sky in anguish and he said, this too shall pass. Eventually, Cian was too old to travel, but his reputation as a far-fassa, as a wise man, had spread far and wide. And so it was that one day he received a letter from the Druid of the OBOD, the High King. And it said, the OBOD has recently lost his wife and newborn son. And he is so devastated by grief, he hasn't smiled in months. Tá acne ega, fáin le fáin, le frosa, a chur brón ar far sunna, agus ás ar far bronach. And we go on, Carolish. He wishes to have a ring with a phrase engraved on it that can make a happy man sad and a sad man happy. Can you help him? Cian remembered that gold ruby ring that it had made for Aoife all those years ago and had never managed to give to her. And he put it in a small package and he sent it to the OBOD. And on receiving the package, the OBOD, the High King, inspected the ring, and as he read the engraving inside the ring, tears of joy and sadness simultaneously rolled down his cheeks. What was written on it? This too shall pass. And so, they say, on pain Thorshuk, fear to save not narrow, the only real constant of life is change. So the arrival of the hearth presents us with opportunities for change and challenges that come with it. And some have greeted this with enthusiasm and excitement, and others less enthusiastic, perhaps more sceptical, or find the whole idea of this really, really stressful. And some are just resistant to technological changes. I'm a little bit like that myself, though I do like the hearth. And worldwide we're experiencing huge changes, between climate change and futile wars, which can easily send us into despair. And we need to be gentle with ourselves and with each other. We need to be kind to ourselves and to each other. And to use, who knows where we'll be in the next 10 years, 20 years. Will we be in Strode Theatre? Will we move back to the town hall? How will we be? How will the heart be? Just remember, this too shall pass.
Good morning, everybody. It is a tremendous honour to speak between two chosen chiefs at the 60th anniversary celebrations of OBOD. I've known OBOD for half its life. This is my 30th anniversary in it. And indeed, at all of the 26 years of summer gatherings in and around Glastonbury. I've come to regard myself at times as the ballpoint Pendragon of the order, the cheaper, lighter and more disposable understudy for Dave, but with occasional use when people need to take notes. And therefore, recognising that the pen has its own value with the sword, I uncap this file. Drawing from the stormy waters of publication and returning to them to address the question, put to me of what has Druidry ever done to the world. Now, this is something I get asked a lot and have been for some time. People often say we get an immense amount out of being Druids ourselves, but what can we give back? What can we give to the globe, the planet, to humanity as a result of what we have learned and what we are? And very often the aspiration, which makes perfect sense at the present time, is to draw upon the association of Druids with a reverence for nature to address the ecological and environmental threats to our planet and our own lands. And that's absolutely appropriate. I would say that there's actually no need for anybody in OBOD to feel that they need to go out and do anything unless they wish. Because something that the Order, like most esoteric groups, does incredibly well is take people out of the world, give them inner worlds to explore, give them places where they can feel truly at home, recharge and develop themselves so they can then go back into the apparent world more capable of doing things in it. And that in itself is an invaluable resource. But when you look back at the history of Druidry, it is clear that Druids have done an immense amount to change the world. But until now, ironically, none of it's been concerned with the natural environment. It's all been tuned into a quite extraordinary strain of extreme liberal and socialist political and social radicalism. And I'm going to point that up with 4 very quick examples, ancestors whom we can, if we wish, honour as Druids. The first is a London builder called Henry Hurl, who in the year 1781, in a pub in Poland Street, London, started the ancient order of Druids. Now, this was an imitation of the Freemasons, who at that time were an immensely numerous and powerful and elitist organisation. And what Henry did, being a working man, was establish an order in which ordinary working men could express themselves in the performing arts, in music, in poetry, and in drama, in a way that they weren't given a place to in much of society, and support and encourage each other. And within 20 years, there were thousands of members across the entire country. Within 50, they were across the entire English-speaking world. And they then spread into continental Europe. Millions of people over 200 years passed through Henry Hurl's group, and it's still alive today, giving freedom of expression to people in their creative lives who'd been denied it. Only 10 years later, an even more radical character came along from Glamorgan in Wales, Edward Williams, known mostly by his bardic name of Iolo Waganag. He it was who's given us the basic form of our ceremonies in OBOD and the Druid's prayer. His reputation in modern Wales is assured because his ceremony still opens the national Eisteddfod, the great cultural heart and expression of the Welsh. But his reputation in modern Wales is deeply ambiguous. You could say he combines the associations of Nelson Mandela and Adolf Hitler, which is actually quite a difficult task to pull off. For one thing, he was a vegetarian, a pacifist. He campaigned that all people, adults and working, should get the vote. He gave women equal admission to his order, and he set to work to construct a society and a politics of universal sisterhood and brotherhood. In other words, he represented some of the highest and finest ideals ever known to humanity. He was also a jailbird, a drug addict, a deadbeat dad, an appalling husband, somebody incapable of doing anything with anybody for more than a year before quarrelling with them bitterly, and above all, a sustained, brilliant, and endemic forger and charlatan. But he put all these undesirable human qualities to the service of the highest of ideals, and something he never lost was his unflinching courage. He and his Welsh Druids were regularly attacked, beaten up, and their lives threatened by the South Welsh Georgian equivalent of rednecks from the American South. They were in the same position as human rights campaigners in the Deep South in the early 1960s. And they kept on meeting. They were savaged, they were menaced, they were ridiculed, but they stood up to it as pacifists, never with violence, always with peaceful, non-violent protest, just like Martin Luther King and his people. And the rednecks gave up, and the Druids came through, and virtually all of Yolo's ideals have been realised in Britain at the present day. But he looks quite conventional compared with my third character, another Glamorgan person, Dr. William Price from Llantrysnd. Price had all of Yolo's ideals, but with an edge of genuine political revolution. He twice had to flee Britain and take refuge on the continent. Once disguised as a woman, fleeing from arrest by the government, and once disguised as a dead body in a coffin, fleeing from arrest by the considerable number of people to whom he owed money. In Paris, he went into the Louvre Museum and saw an engraved ancient Greek tablet about astrology, which he brilliantly misread as ancient Welsh and a prophecy that he was the Messiah to bring Druidry to the British. So he came home to do just that. He never attracted any followers, but he certainly attracted attention. He designed a druidical costume modelled on that of Davy Crockett, the American frontiersman. But people who thought this might be rather odd were grateful for it, because at least it meant he was keeping his clothes on. All too often he was removing them to show his underwear covered in ancient druidic characters written in silver, which he would then expound to his audience. But he changed the world more than any other druid before or since. And he did so as a knock-on effect of getting shacked up at the age of 82 with a good-looking 21-year-old woman. And they produced 3 children over the next few years. The first of them, whom William had imaginatively named Jesus Christ, died tragically and naturally as a baby. And William decided to cremate his son, being, as he quite correctly recognized, one of the great ancient pagan means of hygienically disposing of a human body. But being William, he chose to do so on a January early evening on top of a mountain peak overlooking the town at the exact time that thousands of people were coming out of the 29 Christian places of worship in Llantrysnd. And they all saw this enormous fire on the top of the peak and flooded up to see what was happening, and came across William Price in a white Druid's robe, chanting a medieval Welsh poem and burning the body of a baby on top of a bonfire. They immediately concluded he committed a human sacrifice, and only the arrival of the police stopped him from being lynched. Mercifully, a coroner found the body of the baby was not too burned and diagnosed a natural death, but he was then put on trial for trying to cremate a body. And this is where William showed that though being a man for whom the term eccentric is really too limited, was perfectly sane. He was, by the way, an excellent medical doctor who cured thousands of people. And in court, he defended himself with cool rationality, pointing out that the law was actually wide open. There wasn't a law that forbade cremation. And it was hygienic, it was suited to an expanding society, it was good for the environment, and he was acquitted. And he returned to Llantrisant a hero, as he had left it a demon, and became a national hero thereafter. The first public crematorium was built within a year of his court case, and it's now the preferred mode of disposing of human bodies in the Western world at the present day. William died at the age of 93. His last words were to ask for more champagne. And so we come to our last example, who is our direct ancestor, the founder of the order from which OBOD took birth in 1964, the Universal Bond. And that is a gigantic, muscular Scotsman called George Watson MacGregor Reid. Now, he was a firebrand of socialism, just as Iolo and William had been, and as Henry Hurl was in cultural affairs. It's well known that he founded the Order of Druids that carried on public ceremonies at Stonehenge from 1912 right through until 1985, and they still exist. It's less well known that after the evening ceremony at midsummer at Stonehenge, he and his Druids, who camped on the chalk land to the south, would hold open meeting for any working people from the county, and hundreds of labourers and farmers would listen to George Watson MacGregor Reid telling them about the coming future in which there would be no rich and no poor, and everybody would be able to get the true reward of their labours in a socialist utopia. And they cheered him. It's an aspect of the Druidical Stonehenge rites which is now virtually forgotten. But that wasn't the most splendid thing that his order did. The ideological basis was an attempt to unite all the great philosophical and religious traditions of humanity under the banner of Druidry. And that included the great traditional world religions of Shinto, Confucianism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And this became politically red hot in 1911 because of a group of radical Islamists, the Senussi. They were in North Africa and they preached pacifism, but also against the imperialism of European powers. By this date, the British and the French, mostly, but also the Belgians and the Germans, had carved up pretty well the whole of Africa between them and turned it into colonies. But Libya was still independent. But in that year, 1911, Italy, which had been late to the colonial race, invaded Libya to take it as a colony. And the Senussi preached vehemently against them as aggressors while practicing pacifism in the face of the engagement. They had their base in the desert in the south of Libya, and there they made their stand as after a couple of years, the Italian conquest closed in on them. And knowing that they stood for pacifism and for the human race to be better to each other, 21 Druids of MacGregor-Reed's order went out to stand with them in the desert, and there they died with them. And their bones lie in the sand unmarked to this day. Now that, folks, is walking your talk. And those were our ancestors. So, a quick introduction to our heritage. What I am not saying is that we should all head out of this theatre and out of this gathering determined to improve the human race and launch a public career for ourselves as agitators and as leaders. What I am saying instead is that Druids succeed best by doing themselves. And in at least 3 cases here, the people whom I've described did so largely as a function of their sheer weirdness, of their utter nonconformity, the fact that they did walk their own individual talk and chose their paths for themselves. And so what I say instead, if we can gain a lesson from any of this, is 2 things. First, be proud, because we have ancestors of whom we can be proud. Second, be certain that Druidry has changed the world before, and may do so again. And third, in the ways in which we choose, individually and when we choose, according to our own inclinations, talents, dispositions, wishes, fortune, and spirit guides, simply to be ourselves, and in doing that, to give the most precious thing we can to this world. Happy birthday, OBOD.
Thank you so much, Ronald. Thank you so much, Ina. That's wonderful. Let's take a moment to drop deeper into this moment now. It's so interesting. To do this, you might want to close your eyes. It just makes it easier, but you don't have to. You can keep your eyes open if you want to. And just notice how you're feeling. Just notice, drop deeper into the experience of being here. These weekends flash by really fast. And so I think it helps to just enter into the moment a little. And then see if you can feel the quality of, what should we call it, energy, consciousness, awareness that you sense. And then coming back out now, what I wanted to say was, when I was 11, I met New. And it happened to be the year that the order was founded, so that's 60 years ago. And I didn't know it at the time, of course, that while he was chatting with my dad and being introduced to me for the first time, actually that was the year that he was founding the Order of Bards, OBODs and Druids. And so much has happened and changed over these 60 years. It's really quite extraordinary, and Ina's story really depicted that. This constant change, and yet these themes that are the same. And this quality of feeling that it's possible to touch into. Sometimes one's distracted, or one's feeling nervous or strange or whatever, and you can't do it. But I think part of our training, if you like, in Druidry is to help us drop into that place that of awareness that we perhaps find when we're in the grove, a place of peace and calm and connection with others. And I think the invitation in these gatherings, Because as Ina said, we have the hearth, we have this wonderful online place now where we can all gather. So why aren't we all sitting at home, staring at screens? Why have we actually made the effort to come here? Well, there's something that happens when we come together, and it's mysterious. And I think it's important not to always try to understand what's going on. One of the secrets, I think, about living a full life is to not constantly try to get what's happening, because it's in that openness and that lack of certainty that we're able to feel joy and to make connections and for new things to come into our awareness that we weren't expecting. But I think the invitation at one level is for us to bask and weave. Bask and weave. So one thing that happens when I close my eyes and I tune in to being here or just being with people is this, there's probably another word, but I can't think of it at the moment, is bask, which is just really enjoying the presence of everyone, just being together. There's a quality that is warm and energizing and relaxing and reinforcing and restorative, and a whole bunch of different qualities come from that. So this basking, really enjoying it. And basking tends to be something that we only do on a holiday. We don't bask on a beach or bask when we get into the water or something like that. And bask in a bath, I suppose. But it's something that I think we can drop into at any time. We can just flip that switch and drop down and bask. So bask and then weave. Why weaving? Well, something's going on, isn't it? It's not just receptive. There's some process going on of us making these connections, sharing our stories together. And I think these two ideas of basking and weaving aren't trivial. I think they go to the heart of who we are as human beings. When we strip everything away and we let go of our attachments to feelings in our body and our emotions and our mind and thoughts and concerns and so on, and just drop into a sense of what we might want to call our soul or our inner essence or being. At one level, that is simply being and in a way passive. In other words, we're just open, the chalice. But by definition, we are also active. We are doers as well as beers. Because if we were supposed to just be, we wouldn't have breakfast in the morning. Or lunch, we just be, we just sit there. But no, there's something about being incarnated, being born, that we are beers, but we're also doers, we are active. And so there's this active process of weaving going on. We're soaking stuff in, basking in it, but we're also weaving and making connections. Which is why, if any of you have come on your own, and it's a pretty kind of daunting thing, I think, to come into a bunch of people who you don't know, and you've maybe travelled a long way and so on. But do feel free to just talk to anybody and to reach out. And also for those of us who are together in groups or in couples or whatever, or have been coming a lot, remember that there are people here who perhaps haven't been before and who are new. So and that weaving and you know how weaving is such an important, there are these wonderful weaving songs, aren't there, the Highlands and some really traditional. Weaving is this magical act, and what happens when you weave is you get this beautiful cloth that comes out of it. And that's how I often experience the order, as this kind of beautiful cloth tapestry wove, mandala, energy, flower, landscape that is just growing, and it's a pleasure. And I have been in awe for the last 60 years, but particularly in the last, 30 years or something like that. I only realised this morning, that I've been sort of astounded for decades, really. And it's not the rabbit trapped in the headlights, but it's a bit of that. It's a bit of astoundedness. And that's my sort of primary mode, I think, particularly in relation to the order, because it's just so extraordinary. When I talk to people, when I make connections and hear people's stories and so on. And there's a step that I know that I need to make more consciously in my life, which is to move from being awestruck to being grateful. And I find I tend to stay in the awestruck state, but it's a good practice for me to be grateful, because there's a wonderful way in which all the magic that happens in the order is thanks to so many people, so many people who have brought this together. When I stood on Glastonbury tour when I was 18, when I was 16, I asked Ewan if I could be initiated into the order, and he said no. And I was astonished and very upset, because for a 16-year-old to wait, he said, no, you have to wait until you're 18. And to wait 2 years felt like an eternity. And but when I was up on the tour, there were probably, 10 of us or something, maybe 8. I mean, really tiny amount of people. But together with that wonderful streak of weirdness that Ronald pointed to, there was the third ear band. And we all know about the third eye, but some of us don't know about the third ear. And the third ear band decided to bring to us an awareness of what happens when you open your third ear. And it's an acquired taste, but you can find their recordings still. And they were there. And that was one of the amazing abilities Ross had, Ewan had, was that on the one hand he was very conventional and really quite sort of restrained and quite shy in a way, but also in the funny way that we can often combine ambiguous qualities. He was both shy and introverted, but also very social. He always brought people, to his house and brought people together in ceremony and so on. And so, despite the fact that he was quite shy and conventional and concerned about being conventional, he was able to reach out to people like the third ear band. I mean, heaven knows where he kind of found them, but he got them, and he got them up Glastonbury tour, which was amazing. So, at this time of the 60th anniversary, I'd just like to personally thank everybody who has made the order what it is today, this extraordinary group of people. And what's been fascinating in the last few years, since handing over to Emma, has been watching this gradual transition of personnel, if you can say, and the way in which that has happened in such a beautiful way. From the mentor coordinating to Fee, who's sitting there, the editorship of Touchstone, Penny Billington, having carried the flame for so many years, I've forgotten her so many. Is she here? Penny, are you here?
Yeah.
How many years?
I can't remember.
You can't remember either.
2001.
22 years. Very Kabbalistic sort of number. Yeah, 22 years. Yes, and now Andrew, producing these beautiful copies of Touchstone and so on. And that sort of story is being replicated in all sorts of ways all over the world. So thank you. And I don't know what's happening next, so I can't introduce that.
It's fine.
grows the sky, and red is the fire of my love as dragon road. Sunrise sometimes the sunrise. Sunrise sometimes the sunrise. Sunrise sometimes the sunrise.
The kingfisher's melody returns. These lands shall dance in green once more. Fishing for the king, is that the tune we now play? Once and future, waking from deep slumber. As sunrise opens, over tree, on hill, on land of old.
It really was the most wonderful weekend. Philip mentioned the personnel changes that have been happening in the Order, and for 20 years I'd been the organiser of the OBOD's summer and winter gatherings, and this was the first one in 20 years I could go to as a member of the Order, thanks to a new organising team of Tom, Lorraine and Marcella, and it was wonderful. I remember sitting there looking around and thinking, so this is why everyone loves these events. So a big thank you to the new team too for organising such a great weekend. After the presentations, you heard Sunrise from the Space Goats from their album 13 Moons in Motion. Man, that takes me back to some incredibly powerful, magical times. I don't think their music is available anywhere anymore, which is such a shame. But if any of you know that is wrong, do let me know and I will update everybody next month. So this music means we are approaching the end of the show, but before I go, let's have the results of last month's competition. The prize was a signed copy of my new album, Raise the Flag of Green, and the question I asked was, the title track, Raise the Flag of Green, is dedicated to which season? Well, the answer is spring, and the first name drawn from the hat and winner of my CD is Peyton Ferguson in Arizona. Congratulations, Peyton. That CD will be with you very soon. The prize this month is a signed copy of the Taliesin sourcebook that has been sent in as a prize by the author Frank Holding. It is a fabulous sourcebook with translations of the prophetic, poetic, legendary and early historical poems attributed to the bard Taliesin. Thank you so much for sending that in, Frank. And the question I'd like you to answer is, What is the meaning of the name Taliesin? What is the meaning of the name Taliesin? Email your answer along with your full postal address to podcast@druidry.org, and one of you will win that fabulous book. Well, that is a show. I will see you next month for episode 205. But until then, have a glorious solstice, my friends, and I wish you all, as ever, peace and blessed be. Goodbye.